Hello again, my friends, and welcome to this Penpot hands-on session. So, if you haven't joined us before, in these sessions, I show you how I do design work with Penpot, and we will dig into the practical details of using Penpot. And I'm here to answer any questions along the way because we are live. Today, I'll be working on a UI design that makes use of design tokens and my design tokens starter kit. And stick around until the end because I have something very new and exciting coming from me and the Penpot folks. Please ask questions. We are live unless you're watching this back as a recording, in which case you could probably still ask questions in the comments or join us on the Penpot community, but ask questions whichever platform you're watching us on. We should be able to pick the questions up, whether that is live here or by a member of the Penpot team. At the end of this session, we will also have the design tokens doctor in session, which is me. And you can ask any questions throughout that come up. So you can get your questions ready or ask them as you think of them. And it's nice to see how many of you are joining us already. So, what is Penpot? Penpot is the open source design tool for both designers and developers. And what are design tokens? Well, I think we'll get into that. So let's get into how to get the design tokens starter kit. So I'm going to jump into the Penpot hub. So jumping in, there we go. And here, this is at, best if I actually remember the URL, penpot.app/penpothub. Good start, Laura. And here you can find a whole variety of libraries and templates and plugins. And if we go to the libraries and templates section, and you can search or you can filter or you can just scroll down. And I'm going to find, keep scrolling. Laura, did you scroll past it? No, there we go. The design tokens starter kit. And if I select this, very handily, I can just hit the button to use in penpot.app. So I'm going to do that. It's just checking that I am a human being. Here we go. And this is importing the tokens starter kit. And this has imported it to one of my projects. If I open that up, I can instantly see that I have this file here. Now, this file contains a whole load of demos using design tokens, but it also contains the tokens themselves. And if I go to the tokens tab in the left panel of Penpot, you can see a whole bunch of tokens in here. So these are all the sets that I have for the tokens, which is just a way of grouping all of my tokens, and I can choose to turn on and off different sets. And if I select different sets, I can see the tokens available inside it. So here I have border radius tokens, color tokens, dimension tokens. What is a design token? Well, it's essentially a value with a name. So you can save colors and sizes and spacing, all of these little design decisions you can save as design tokens. And naming them makes them much easier to find them, to reuse them, and to share them with the rest of your team as well. It gives you a really good way to create consistent designs because you don't have to remember a value. You don't have to keep going and looking it up. You can just hit the design token and apply it to your design. So it's creating things a lot quicker than without them. You can also edit design tokens very easily once you've already created them. And you can kind of create them so they have a bubbling effect throughout your design. So an example of this is I'm going to go to the, now what I've got comfortable density selected right now. And I'm going to go and change this density token. So if I edit the token, right now the density of a comfortable density is 1. Maybe I want to change that to 1.2. So if I hit save, you might notice that a whole bunch of my tokens just resized. All of these different elements of the design resized. And that's because if I say go to my spacing and look at this spacing token here, the value of the spacing token is calculated by a linear value multiplied by the density token. So you can do some really clever and complex calculations with your tokens. Anyway, this starter kit has a whole load of different things inside it. If I hit through the pages, you can see we've got different colors, we've got different ways to do spacing and sizing as well. We have light and dark modes too. So if I switch between my themes, I can switch between light mode and dark mode. Oh, that's a bit easier to see, isn't it? And I'm going to actually just quickly change my density token back. I can foresee an issue coming in the future if I don't do that right now. So these are all demo pages. And I can use all of these tokens. I could just get started with a new page and a new design inside of here. But what if you don't want all the demos present in your design? Well, you could go and delete all of these pages and you'd still have the tokens in the file. Or you can export your tokens to import them into another file. So if I go to this little tools button down here at the bottom of the tokens panel, I have the option to import existing design tokens, and that's in the JSON design tokens format. Not really important unless you're already working with design tokens. And I can export them. This is actually what a design tokens file looks a little bit like. It's quite readable. It's not as intimidating as you might think for a lot of code. And do I want to export it? This is a brand new feature that's dropped in Penpot as of yesterday. I can export it as a single file or as multiple files. And that's really handy if you want to open your individual different sets and themes up and use them separately in maybe your development process if you need to import them into a different platform, because you can do that because design tokens are platform agnostic. So I'm just going to export them as a single file for now. So I've hit export and that has downloaded. And now I am going to go on to create a UI design with design tokens. And so that will be our next section, creating a UI design with design tokens. Just going to find the right, I have too many teams. So this is a team I've just created for this hands-on. If I open up this file, you can see that I have already created a little wireframe to work from. We're going to create a settings app page today because it's quite simple, but it contains a lot of elements that you're likely to use in your UI designs. I've done this kind of rough sketch of a wireframe of a page, and I've cheated a little bit because I replaced the text with actual text. So I can copy and paste that into my mockup, and you don't have to watch me do too much typing, because if you've been here before, you know how painful that can be. So let's get started with creating a layout for this. I'm going to create a new board alongside this board, and I'm going to go for a size preset, something that's webby. So this is for a web app. I'm just going to go quite small, 1024 pixels by 768 pixels. Let's zoom out a little bit so you see what we're doing. And I'm going to call this board settings mockup. We like to keep our things nicely labeled. Now, maybe I want to create a background color first, and I want to use my design tokens for that. I've jumped into the tokens panel already, but I haven't got any tokens in here. And that's when I want to import my tokens, choose the file, single file, and choose that I downloaded earlier. And that has imported all of those same tokens. You can see the same sets and the same tokens that were in the previous starter kit file. So all the benefit of the starter kit without all of the demos. And maybe I want to start off by using a background color. Now I happen to know that most of the colors that I want to use in my mockup will be in one of these base files. I want to design in light mode to begin with, so I'm going to select the light mode theme, and that you can see that this set is enabled as part of that. And if I jump in here and I've got this board selected, I'm just going to choose the best color for this background. Now you can see I've got a lot of semantic design tokens here. These are design tokens that are named for their use. They have more of a meaningful name. A non-semantic token, which could be like a foundation token, a global token, these are all names that we use for this type of token, would be something like this blue 050 or black or radius 2x. These don't really have any meaning as to how they're going to be used, aside from the fact that it will be used on the radius. And so these we tend to abstract into more semantic meaning for their uses because it's a good way of communicating how the tokens should be used. So if I go into light base, now what you might not be able to see here is if I hover over the individual tokens, because tooltips don't tend to be captured very well in screen capture, there's actually, if I hover over it, it tells me the original value of this token and the resolve value of the token without even having to open it. Or I can open up this token by editing it, and it can tell me, okay, so this token name is layer base background, and it has a value of, and it refers to this token called neutral 50. If I hunt around, I happen to know it will be in here. If I go and see what the neutral 50 token is that it's referring to, I can see that neutral 50 is actually pink gray 50. And then if I go into the foundations, I can scroll down and I can find pink gray. I know my alphabet, pink gray 50. If I edit that token, I can see that actually boils down to the hex code value of FC, FB, FC, a very light pink gray. So that's the color I want to use. I won't go dig into the details of every single design token. I just wanted to give you an idea of how you can reference tokens and build up this more meaningful system. So I'm going to jump into the base set and I'm going to apply the layer base background color. Actually, no, I'm going to apply to the actual background itself. I'm going to go slightly darker just to create a little bit of contrast between a sort of, you see in this wireframe, I've got a little background and my settings themselves are kind of inside a window looking thing. So I'm going to make this slightly different color. I'm going to make this layer 2. So it's a bit grayer. And already you'll be able to see if I jump between dark mode and light mode, it changes the background color. Really useful for when you're designing like this. Next up, let's make some layout. Let's start with the logo here. And I already created this little logo icon. So I'll paste that in just for ease sake. I didn't actually come up with a name for my app yet. So I'm going to be really original and just call it Lightning. And I'm just going to give it some typography. I'm not going to jump too far into the typography today because it'll be worth doing that again when we have more typography tokens in Penpot, which are coming very soon. So for now, I've just switched that to Inter because it's an interface and that is what everybody's doing nowadays. And what color do I want these to be? If I zoom in a little bit, I am going to select, if I have a look, I'm just going to check that this icon uses a fill rather than a stroke because that's useful to know how I need to apply the design token. And the text has a fill as well, which means if I select them simultaneously, I can assign their tokens at the same time. And I'm going to give these the heading text color. But if you think about it, heading text isn't a very semantic meaning for an icon. And so actually I'm going to create a whole new icon, a whole new design token for this. So I'm going to scroll back up here and add a token. And I'm going to call this heading.icon. And what I'm going to do with heading.icon is I always want it to be the same as heading text. So I'm going to refer to, so this is using For a reference, you just wrap it in the curly brackets like this, and I just say heading dot text. And so that's going to make sure my heading icon is always the same color as my heading text. If I change my mind in the future, I can always just put a whole different hex code in here, refer to some other value. I can do that. But it's just making sure that my tokens remain meaningful to what I'm using them for. And so I'll do that. And so I've got my little logo here. Let's add a flex layout to that. Make sure it's going in the right direction. I'll call this logo. I'm just going to use the arrow keys to reorder those. Maybe I want to change the spacing in between my little lightning icon and my text. Right now, it's just in the flex layout. It's just for the gap. It's just picked what I'd already dragged the elements to be by default. And I want to go to tokens, and I go to my spacing set. And I'm going to put maybe extra small spacing on the gaps between the icon and the text. That's maybe a little big, actually. I'm going to go 3XS. And this is the beginning of you watching me attempt to eyeball spacing sizes. It will get easier as we go along. Right, what else do we need? We need a dashboard, bit of text, and we're going to have profile, multi-select these. I'm just going to copy them in here, and I'm going to give them all the inter font. I'm going to make them 16 is too big, 14 pixels, and make sure that they fit the width of the text. And I'm just going to name this typography sidebar link because I can't not be organized while I'm doing this. It's against the law. I have to make sure everything is nice and neatly organized. There we go. So this is using Penpot typographies. You can find another hands-on that I did that focused on things like typographies. I'll make sure I add a link to it in the community post about this hands-on. Now we've got that going on, right, and got our dashboard. We want to have an icon, a little arrow icon alongside our dashboard. So I'm going to open up the plugins, and I already have the icons plugin installed. That's a plugin you can get from Penpot Hub. I'm going to open that up and find myself an arrow that points to the left, just like that. That's handy. And I'm going to select that. Now, for one, it's too big. So, but I want the size of it to be something that I can apply to all of the icons that might later on appear in this sidebar. So I'm going to dictate its size using the sizing tokens. And if I hover over these, I should be able to see which sizes they are. Okay, so sizing SM resolves to 16. So that would be perfect. In order to make this, you should give it a flex layout. Oh no, not the icon itself. Chaos. Let's give the container. I'm going to wrap this so that it doesn't do that. Right, arrow icon. Give it a flex layout. I don't want to flex layout the icon itself because that will make the arrow look really wonky, as you saw. So I'm just giving that a flex layout, and then I can apply the token to it fairly easily. And I'm going to say, was it sizing medium? No, sizing small. And I'm going to apply this to the height and the width of the icon. And that will make sure that it is the right size. I've just got to make sure the inside of it is going to be the same as well. Okay, I don't know why that's not doing what I want it to right now, but let's not waste too much time on that. I'm just going to resize it manually. And I'm going to change the color of my arrow. This is actually an icon that uses strokes instead of fills, so I need to be aware of that as I'm applying the token. And I'm going to add let's do the same as the heading icon color for that, and that's being applied to the stroke. And these links, Even though they are links, I'm just going to give them the same color as they're going to be layer 1. So they're all layer 1 text. Oh, so maybe I want that to be layer 1 icon, don't I? Yes, I do. So let me select the stroke there and apply layer 1 icon instead. And a quick little bit of flex to make this laid out nicely. Make sure they're centered to each other. Maybe I'll make the gap the same as it is here. So I'm going to add the grid gap on this. Will be spacing small. Oh, no, that's too big. It was 3XS, wasn't it? It was, yes, 3XS. They're not quite lined up. That's what doesn't look right. So maybe we should line them up. So we'll add another flex layout. And how's that looking? It's looking okay. The space between them is a bit big. So maybe we'll add medium gap between them. And let's lay out our friends here. So we're going to add a flex layout to those. Oh, that looks instantly better. And we'll maybe put small gap between them. I reserve the right to change my mind later. And we want all of these objects to be in one big flex layout. And this is going to make up our sidebar navigation. Oh, I probably want a dividing line there as well. So let's do a nice little line. That brings us to a nice token that is called stroke width. And I've got some of these set up here in the foundations. I could be more specific about stroke widths. In my UI, I could give them more semantic names for different types of dividers and things like that. But in this instance, how many different stroke widths am I going to use? So I'm just going to go for a small medium stroke width here that automatically applied to the stroke. And let's change the color to the layer 1 border. That doesn't look right to me. That's because I applied it as a fill. Layer 1 border applied to the stroke. I think what I've done here is I think I've not actually added a good fill color for stroke color for the layer 1 border to the starter kit. I probably need to update it for dark mode. We'll think about that later. Okay, and I want to apply a background color overall. That will be my layer 1 background. And let's give that a bit of padding. So maybe small spacing around the lot of it. Actually, no, we don't want small spacing. We want no spacing. Now, I have a token for that. Even though you don't need it, you could remove the padding manually from these boxes here. But it's because I want this little dividing line, which is not even included in there. Divider. This is my side nav. That's going to be between, gosh, she wasn't naming anything. It's not very me, is it? Head, top. There we go. And nav. And so now the divider's in there properly. Now our gap is a little large but around those items. So just did the right thing, Laura. And so we're going to add some padding, row gaps. There we go. It's a bit neater. And then we can apply the padding itself to allow this divider to be full width, which I'm just setting there as a flex element. Fix its height. I am going to select both the top nav and the top section and the bottom nav, and I'm going to apply the same amount of padding to those, and you'll see how this works. I'm going to add medium horizontal padding, and you see that allows that line to keep being that full width, but they fill up a bit more space, and this needs a bit of padding at the top and the bottom. Do medium again. That would be its vertical padding. And hey, let's make this a flex layout, and then this will fill. We can make it fill. Flex layout, let's give it a little spacing as well. Extra small, padding around the outside. And then we could set this to fill the full height. That looks more like a sidebar now. And maybe we'll add from foundations a border radius, maybe small on the top left and the top right. Oh no, not top right, bottom left. So you can see where this is going to be the beginning of this. And let's remove that from the top right. So I could remove it by deselecting the top right radius, or what I can do is I can just open up the radius options and remove that value from there. Oh, it's telling me no. Computer says no, Laura, you've got to keep it like that. Let's say all, take it off all. Radius none. There we go. Reset with radius none. Chaotic clicking going on here. Top left, bottom left. There we go. That's much better. And now we'll do this settings section. So we have a similar layout. I'm just going to try and do this really quickly. Let's grab the text that we want. Only going to grab the text for now, and you'll see why in a moment. These are going to be in a flex layout. It's going to be our main section. It's already jumped into the right place because of the flex layout on the container. And I want to change that typography so it doesn't break our eyes. I'll make that. I like a nice big heading, so we're going to make that 30. Fit the width of the text, fit the width of the text, and make this 24. We want it to flow from top to bottom. We want it to fill the available width. We want it to fill the available height. We want to have a background color in tokens that is our base layer. Let's add the radiuses, radii to the right. Let's see if I can get this right first time. Radius small, top right, yes, and bottom right, yes. And so now you can see it's like makes a nice continuous shape. This needs a bit of padding on it as well. So we'll jump back into the spacing set, and we're going to add, I like to be quite generous with padding on elements like this. So let's put medium on all for now. Maybe we'll do large on the verticals. And that now looks like it doesn't line up at all. It's going to make my face itch. Okay, we'll do large on all. If it's not going to line up, it may as well not line up in a big way. And let's put some spacing between the elements by default. So we'll do that with gaps, which gaps are only in between the elements. It's not around the elements. So we'll do it like that. Now, maybe before I jump any further, because I skipped a Q&A earlier, let's see if we have any questions so far. You know what it's like when I'm doing UIs, I really rattle through it all. I'm trying to make sure that we get as close to the end as we possibly can. So that's a reminder that you can ask me questions on any of the platforms that you are watching this on right now, whether we're live or whether you're joining from later on down the line. I'll do my best to answer them. So do we have any questions before I move on to the next section? Okay, sorry, it was there. I was just, it's very small and my eyesight in my old age. Okay, hi, Penpot. It's very interesting, but for a developer's point of view, do you know how to fetch the inspect code from our design via the API? You could do this via the Penpot API, and if you just jump into the user guide, you'll be able to find docs on the API in there. You can actually inspect and grab code directly from Penpot as well. You can do this from the inspect tab. And so say, for example, let me grab this bit we were just working on here. You see if I select it, and you know I was working on all of that flex layout. Well, flex layout is a CSS concept. So you can grab the properties of your flex layout directly from this info section if you just want to grab that and apply it to a component that you're building by yourself. Or you can grab the code for it, which includes the CSS, which you can get from here, or you can get HTML as well from there. And so you can grab the code or copy all of the code just to paste into your text editor. Do we have any more questions? Is it possible to define the typography by tokens before you start? Yes, if that's your preferred way of working. Right now, Penpot doesn't support typography tokens. They are in the works. Typography tokens are a little bit more complex than some of the tokens we've got in here, because if you think about a typography, it's made up of a font size, line height, all of those elements. And so you really need them to be a composite design token. So Penpot's going to have those very soon. And in fact, if you look in the right place on the community, you'll be able to see a little sneak peek of font sizes in action. I'm going to move on just for time to our next section, because I want to show you when you come to elements like this, you're likely to repeat them a lot through your UI, and that will be a useful point to make components. So let's look at building a Penpot components library. So here in my settings here, I've got this little form elements. Form elements, you're likely to use them again and again. And you don't have patterns contained inside design tokens. Design tokens are these very small design decisions. So I'm going to create some components out of these elements here. If you look at the features of these elements, so we've got a form input text box with a name. It's got a little section that says required. We've got the same again for a location, but it has an icon. We've got similar for a bio. It's a larger text area. It has a count on how long the text inside it is. We have a website one. That's just a pretty plain text input. So all of these, we could repeat the same thing again and again. And that's what components are useful for, these repeatable patterns. Now to do this, I'm actually going to create a component library. So I could create a component inside of this file that I can repeat very easily, but I might want to actually have it in a way that I can repeat through multiple files and not just in the same file. So I'm going to jump out of my file here, and I'm going to create a new file, and I call that components. I'm just going to change this background color so it doesn't make your eyes bleed. And this will be my components. Now we can use tokens in components as well. It really makes sense to do that. We have these tiny design decisions in the tokens, and then we use those inside of our components to build up bigger patterns. So I'm going to import that same file, tokens file, into here. And I've got tokens just as I've got in the other file. Now, the tokens will still work in both files because I am using tokens with the same name in both files. The tokens in the mockup file, if they're using this components library, will override the tokens in the components library. That's not too much to worry about. It's actually handy if you want to try out overriding the tokens and see what the effect that they might have. But in your team setup, you might want to just keep tokens in your components library and let people use them through the components. It just depends on what your setup is and who you want to be able to change things, really. So I'm just going to create this component. Right. So we have a board, any size board, and I'm going to call this form input. I'm going to take the background off because I don't want it to have a background. So you can see what it looks like, just kind of vanilla. And let's put some text, and this is going to be our input text. You cannot see that at all, so let me switch to light mode. And I'm going to choose the input text color from my light base. Actually, I named that badly. I think that should be input placeholder text. I'm going to use the layer-based text color for that. And I'm going to make that into a flex element, add a flex layout to it. And then I can apply an input background color to the element. And maybe I want to add a border as well, a stroke. And we did this before with the line. We want to add, I did that automatically. I scrolled to border radius. It's like my brain is saying, you want to put a nice rounded corner on it. So I'll do that. What I meant to do was go to stroke width so that I could set the stroke width on my border. And so I will select that. And I'm going to add some spacing to this too. So I'm going to add 2xs padding around the outside of my text. Just jumping into this here, my text is quite big, so I'm going to make that 14. Well, that's quite small. 15, and I'm going to make the line height 1. If you do this in form elements, it always makes the development more straightforward as well. And make sure my text is set to fill the width of the box fits the width of the text. So now I have a little input text. I'm also going to chuck in there as an option for my form elements and placeholder text, because you might want to have placeholder text in the component. You'll see why this works in a minute. I'm going to use the placeholder text color, that design token that I should really rename. In fact, I'm going to rename it. So it's called input text. Apply that to the fill. Edit that token. Would it be text.placeholder? That probably makes sense. The dots are just a way of separating out different groupings. So placeholder is a type of text, so that makes sense to me. I've now broken my icon text. So that's that. I want the icon to be the same color as the placeholder text. Text.placeholder. This is why no one wants to watch you type, Laura. There you go. And that reminds me, an icon, that would be nice, wouldn't it? So let's jump into our icons plugin here, and we want a search icon. So I'm going to search for a search icon, and that looks good. And I'm going to pop that into the layout. I've just used the arrow keys to reorder the flex elements there. I'm just going to use the proportional resizing right now to resize this to a size I like, just to save a bit of time. Sometimes you are working with fixed size icons. I don't think that's overly problematic. And I'm going to select the icon itself and use the input icon color. It's a stroke icon, so I'm going to use it on the stroke. And I think it was applied to the center, wasn't it? That works for me. When we're using this, we will probably turn off the placeholder text by default, and we want to have a bit of space between our icon and our input text. So, gosh, I didn't even name this yet. Input. So I'm going to jump to my spacing and add a gap in there too. So we're going to say, oh, that's too big. 2xs probably. That's what the padding is. Well, maybe even 3xs. Yeah, that looks nice. So there we've got our little form input. I'm going to turn this into a component. You can use Command K, or I'm not going to try and say what the shortcuts are, or just use create component option there. And what you're likely to do is nest components inside your other components too. Oh, not proportional scaling. So I might want to create a pattern that makes sense to use throughout, that contains this input, which would be a form input and a label, and all the other information that we wanted to include. If I jump back to that other design, see we've got this required text, this count text, this we've got the icon in there. So all those elements we might want to add in. So I'm going to add some text, and this is going to be my label text, and that's fine. And I'm going to, for the label text, the color is important. That's going to be layer base text color. And the required text. Now, you might, in your forms, put a little asterisk in red for required text, but it's not ideal, is it? Because not everyone knows what an asterisk means. In fact, I'm saying asterisk right now, and you're like, what are you saying, Laura? You know, the little star thing. That looks like that. That's horrible. Like, people have to really know what that means. Just put the text required, then everyone understands it. Might not be as streamlined, but everyone understands it, and that's the point of a UI. That's accessibility. We'll come to that in a minute. And I'm going to add a flex layout to those to make sure they remain aligned to each other. Let's make sure they're going left to right. We align to the bottom. Just switch the order of those using arrow keys. And so this will be my label and info. We'll also have in there, if there's a count, make the board a bit bigger so we can see what we're doing. So what was it? 0 out of 640 characters. That will be up there too. And we want to align this label and info to our input. So I'm going to call this form label and input. That's going to be the name of the icon. And it's going left to right. I actually want to go top to bottom. And let's add a bit of spacing between the two there. So we do that with gap again. Such a handy design element, that. And let's make this right now, make sure selecting the input is very narrow. And we probably want to put a minimum width on that. So that will be in sizing. So we want to make sure that it is as a minimum, it never gets narrower because it's going to be responsive. We never want it to be narrower than, what was that, 80. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. But we want to make it fill the width of the space as well. Now we've got this really handy little component. So I'm going to create that as a component as well. Now, if I make any changes to this form input, for example, I wanted to change the background color. Just do this quickly like this to violent purple. It will update it inside the component it's nested in as well. So what happens when you want to use these components in your other file? You need to publish these as a library. So you publish the whole file as a library. You do that from the assets panel. You have this manage library button. And then you say here, this is your file library. It has 2 components inside it, and you can publish them. And you can see our 2 components here with their names. You can arrange them by name as well, if you prefer. And now if I return back to our settings, I'm going to go to assets, and I want to add the library. So you can see the components library has now appeared because it's in my team. And connect it with that plus button. And now those components are accessible from the assets panel, and I can pull them in. So now I can start making this look a bit more like my layout. So I've got name, that's required. And I can hide this character count. And I have got here, this will be, oh, I don't want input text actually. Oh, maybe I will. I'm going to hide the icon. And I'll just put in some example input text. What's my name? And here I'll put location. That's not required. There's no character count. It has no input text, but it does have an icon. So you see that's at its minimum width now. We'll sort out the width of all of these in a moment. And let's grab another one for our bio. We're going to hide the required aspect. We don't need to have a placeholder or input text or search. We do want it to be bigger because text input needs to be bigger. So I'm going to set that to a fixed height as a flex element here. And I'm going to use the sizing to set a minimum height for. Actually, I'm going to fix the height of it because text areas are usually fixed. I'm going to make that nice and big, 2XL height. And there we've got a height that just suggests you can put a bit more text in here. And we want one more for the website. So back to layers. Let's hide the required, hide that, change the label text to website. And maybe on this one, we're actually going to have some placeholder text so that we're making use of what we've built. And remind everyone that if you put HTTPS at the beginning of your website, the link will work. Now, these aren't quite the right width right now because they're currently filling, the inputs are filling the width of the labels. They're filling the width of the component total. So let's make some tweaks to that. Let's go to our main. But I'm going to group all of these elements in their own form because we want the spacing to be a little bit different between these. So I'm going to call this form. This has already generated a nice bit of spacing for us, but let's make it use tokens for our gaps. So our row gap will be medium, maybe. Let's see how that works. We can maybe even push it to large just to give us a nice bit of visual hierarchy going on here. And let's give it a minimum width for when this is at a particular breakpoint, something like that. Something that relates to breakpoints, because I know I've got the tokens for them in Foundations. And we're going to make this a minimum width of a small breakpoint. And in order to do that, it needs to be full width. Oh, maximum width, actually. Minimum width can be smaller. Okay, let's take that out. And now that's wider, what I can do is I can get each of these components and make them fill their width. And then I want on these labels here, you can see these aren't quite aligning correctly. We want this to be at the other end. So I'm just going to make a tweak to this particular component for the label and input. I'm going to make that fill all of the width as well. And I'm going to spread these items to space between, like that. Maybe a bit of margin at the top of our form. Now keeping an eye on the time because I know I'm running behind, as I always do when I do these mock-ups. And so let's just add a little spacing on top. She hasn't got to the button yet. Maybe I'll skip the button for now. And we'll add top margin, bit of space in there. Okay, right. So we have built a component library. So let's quickly jump into how you might use design tokens to improve the accessibility. So our next very quick section is going to be using design tokens to improve accessibility. Now, one of the examples of where you would use components and patterns to improve your accessibility is by doing things like including the required text in your component to show people this is the best practice way of saying that a form input has required input for it. So that's one way you could do it. Another way you can do it is when you're doing things like checking the color contrast. So for example, if we wanted to check the color contrast of this placeholder text, so often placeholder text is way too light a contrast against its background color. And right now we can see this is 928890 hex color. And the background is, let's select that. That is FC, FB, FC. There is actually a really cool contrast plugin that you can get from Penpot plugins, and you can use that to test out these colors. So if I open that up, I can select this color. So this is the gray, And actually, sometimes with backgrounds, you just want to create a shape. It's not very friendly to flex layouts. So I'm just going to copy the color of. You can actually see what you're doing if you select layers, Laura. Website, input. So I'm going to grab the color of that, just paste it in to the fill color here. And so now if I select this and I select that, it's going to tell me that for normal text, it's actually quite a low contrast, but for large text, it's acceptable. So really, I should probably look at bumping up the text color there. There's another plugin that you can use that you can find in the Penpot Hub if you want to learn a bit more about accessibility, and that would be the, I haven't even got it installed in here. Oh, the irony. Oh, no, I do. There we go. The Accessible Design Checklist. That's a plugin that I made, and it's just full of tips to help you get started with designing more accessibly. It's not supposed to be a complete guide, but it will help get you started in thinking in more accessible and inclusive terms. What is accessibility? You might ask. It's digital accessibility specifically is about making our interfaces accessible to disabled people specifically, but also anyone who might have an impairment that could affect how they use your UI. So me here, I wouldn't necessarily say that I have a disability, but I do need glasses that I'm not currently wearing to read very small text. And so if you start your text size off at a good font size, that's going to help me out, and that makes it more accessible for a lot of people. And so that's what accessibility does. And you can also create design tokens where you use this text color and create this placeholder text color at a contrast that is accessible against that input background color. And that way, if everyone starts using that by default, you're creating more accessible interfaces by default. Right. Now I've whistle-stopped through that, let's get to the Q&A and see how many questions we can get through in the Design Tokens Doctor section. So, do we have any questions? Right. Hi, thank you for the nice session. Oh, thank you. Is it possible to create toggle controls or variant drop-down selections to hide, show, or switch certain elements in more complex components? Apologize if I missed it and you already spoken about it. I am so glad you brought this up because I was going to bring this up, but I skipped it for time. So right now, you're talking about creating variants in your components. Now, there are ways that you can do this with component swapping and creating nested components and things like that. But coming very soon to Penpot, and if you ask nicely in the Penpot community, you might even be able to get some early access to this feature, are variants. Now, I do actually have an example I made earlier. Excuse the light mode, I had to do it so I didn't end up in the wrong place. And this is a button component. And if you're creating a component, you have options to add new properties and create variants. So this is one button component that has all of these different variants that are different states. So I've got a hover state, a focus state, a press state, and a disabled state. And if I select the component itself, if I'm using it in a mockup, I have the option to choose between different states of hover, focus, press, disabled, etc. And I can create more variants that aren't just, or more properties that aren't just state. They could be color, they could be brand, they could be anything your heart desires. And so that's a little sneak peek at variants that will be out very, very soon in Penpot. As you can see, I'm already playing with it. Do we have any other questions? Where can I get the Design Tokens Starter Kit? So you can get the Design Tokens Starter Kit from the Penpot Hub, and that is here. And if we go to libraries and templates, you can find it in there and you can download it. It's free for everyone. Do we have one more question? I think we can manage one more. Can I create typography design tokens? As I mentioned earlier, currently you can create typographies as I did earlier, here with my little sidebar link typography in Penpot, but you can't yet create typography tokens. Those are coming really soon. In fact, if you go into the Penpot community, you'll be able to see a really great sneak peek into the font sizes token that you can use. The thing about typography is it's not just one thing inside a token, it's actually multiple different tokens in one composite token. So it's got a little bit more complexity to it, which is why it wasn't in the first release of design tokens. And so you've got that to look forward to very soon. And you bet as soon as it's in, I'll be demoing with it because I love typography and I love playing with typography. Right. Now, I've just got a few more things that I wanted to mention before we wrapped up. I've got something I'm really excited to share with you. And my hands-on friends, I had to tell you first. I've been working on a brand new free UI design course with Penpot. This is a video course along with optional assignments. You can do them in your own time or with friends on the Penpot community. You'll learn core interface design skills, techniques, things that will help get you ready for working on UIs with other designers, working as part of teams, or even if you're a developer who wants to know more about UI design, as well as loads of cool tips for Penpot in general. And thanks to Penpot, this will be 100% free for everyone. And you can find out a little bit more and jump into some of the introductory content already at penpot.app/courses. And that's not all. Let's not forget that Penpot Fest is happening in Madrid in Spain in October, and there will be a range of fabulous and insightful talks and workshops that are focused on collaboration and people's real experiences. And of course, the opportunity to hear and see and talk about the future of Penpot. The speakers and the agenda are almost finalized, but you might see some familiar faces there. And you can get your tickets already for Penpot Fest at penpot.app/penpotfest, all one word. And finally, you can get the latest updates about Penpot from Penpot itself. You can follow us on all of the usual social channels. Wherever you're watching now, if you subscribe, you will be able to get updates and you will know the date and the time of our next hands-on session and the topic. Or if you've got any suggestions, let us know too. Also the community sessions and all of the other live sessions that Penpot has coming up. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been chaos as usual. What else did you expect? I really look forward to seeing you again, and thank you for all of your questions and your comments. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.